It was 7:10 local time when the silence of the Persian Gulf was shattered by the roar of a Tomahawk missile rising from the belly of the USS Spruance. With a watchmaker's precision and a Titan's fury, the projectile began its lethal dance toward Iranian territory. What the world was witnessing was no mere exchange of fire, but the opening of the largest American military operation since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. In that instant, geopolitical rhetoric transformed into kinetic reality. The Tehran regime was about to learn, in the bitterest way, why the U.S. defense budget is the envy and terror of the planet. Yet the true genius of this opening lay not in the brute force of the Tomahawks alone, but in an unprecedented deception strategy. While 25 cruise missiles skimmed the surface at barely 15 meters above sea level, exploiting every gap in coastal radar coverage, another actor entered the stage: the Lucas drones. Operated by Task Force Scorpion Strike, these devices represent the pinnacle of cost-exchange warfare. Manufactured by Spectral Works in Arizona, the Lucas drones are the product of a bold reverse engineering effort on Shahed 136S captured from Oron itself. With a production cost of just $35,000, these drones were designed to be expendable. By penetrating Iranian airspace at low speed, they saturated the screens of the Bavar 373 batteries. The Iranian air defense operator faced an impossible dilemma: ignore the contacts and risk a direct hit, or fire interceptors worth over $1 million against what are essentially lawnmowers with wings. By choosing to fire, the Iranian defender sealed his fate. Not only did he drain critical munitions he would need just 30 minutes later, but each launch acted as a beacon, revealing his exact position to the passive sensors of F-35s already lurking at the border. This is the essence of modern warfare under strategic vector command. A symphony of asymmetry where the enemy spends his fortune trying to shoot down your junk while you position the killing blow against his own forehead. As the Lucas drones exhausted the costly interceptor reserves on the periphery, the real hammer blow was taking shape high above Iraqi airspace. At 8:05, the operation entered its strategic decapitation phase. While Tomahawk still crept heavily over the water, a flight of 1-2 Israeli F-15I Ra'ams fighters, shielded by the electromagnetic shadow of the F-35I reached their launch altitude. The difference between a Tomahawk and the Rampage missile is literally a regime survival window. While the former needs 45 minutes to cross from the border to Tehran, the Rampage, a supersonic ballistic missile, cuts that margin to mere minutes. This time gap is the whole game. No time to deliberate, no time to seek shelter, no time to issue orders. Only time to watch the impact on the news. The administrative heart of Iran, Pastor Street, received the first strike. The Supreme Leader's offices were hit with surgical precision, turning concrete complexes into columns of smoke within seconds. But the attack was not indiscriminate. Thanks to Link 16 and constant support from the Oron intelligence aircraft orbiting over Jordan, every coordinate was refined in real time. Behind the ballistic missiles, the F-35I Adirs crossed the border carrying GBU-39S, small-diameter bombs. This is where the F-35's sensor fusion justifies every cent of its investment. The pilot doesn't fight individual radar or infrared screens. He sees a single integrated image combining data from satellites, other aircraft, and his own systems. Millimeter precision, the GBU-39, despite its modest 250 pounds, features deployable wings and GPS guidance that reduces the margin of error to just a few feet. Surgical effect. One of these bombs pierced the roof of the Ministry of Defense, detonating with a delay fuse precisely on the third floor, where operational plans are kept. Systemic targets. Buildings were not struck at random. The objective was the administrative nervous system, the Ministry of Intelligence, the Atomic Energy Organization, and the Parchin military complex. By destroying these nodes, the coalition didn't just eliminate physical structures, it destroyed the Iranian leadership's ability to communicate with its field units. The giant was left blind and mute in under an hour, while its air defenses kept firing at $35,000 shadows. As the nervous system in Tehran collapsed under precision fire, the coalition's attention shifted 700 kilometers south to the industrial and military belt bordering the Persian Gulf. At 8:12, the Tomahawks that had been patiently skimming the waves reached their targets. The IRGC naval base at Asalueh was the first to feel the impact. its command building folded in on itself and fuel depots erupted, sending columns of black smoke marking the end of Iran's regional naval dominance. Minutes later, the true aerial strike force made its entrance. An F-15I Strike Eagle from the 48th Fighter Wing, deployed from Jordan, rolled into a 60-degree dive. The weapons system officer in the rear seat had been locking his target for 40 minutes on his APG-82 radar, a hardened concrete shelter designed to protect PACAP-class fast-attack boats. These vessels are the backbone of Iran's asymmetric warfare doctrine. Small, fast, and rocket-armed, designed to overwhelm the defenses of U.S. warships and oil tankers through sheer numbers. But the swarm tactic requires a point of origin. By releasing a 2,000-pound GBU, 3-1 JDAM, the F-15E turned the shelter into a tomb of steel and concrete. The blast pressure had nowhere to escape, collapsing the roof onto the boats like a fist closing. In a single strike, Iran's ability to close the Strait of Hormuz through fast attack was wiped off the map. Simultaneously, 500 miles to the east, the USS Abraham Lincoln was operating at full power. From its deck, FA-18E Super Hornets from Strike Fighter Squadron VFA, 4-1 Black Aces were catapulted toward Chabahar, Iran's only deep-water port. The objectives were surgical and strategic: submarine docks. Ghadir-class submarine facilities were neutralized. A single small submarine laying mines on commercial routes could paralyze the global economy. By destroying the docks and loading cranes, these submarines became expensive garden ornaments. Anti-ship missile batteries. The C-802 systems on coastal cliffs, the greatest threat to the coalition fleet, were eliminated with GBU, 3 9 small-diameter bombs. By the end of this phase, the Strait of Hormuz remained open and calm. The IRGC Navy, which spent 40 years threatening to strangle global trade, was burning beneath the rubble of its own bases, unable to mount even a coordinated response against the overwhelming superiority of U.S. carrier aviation. 3 hours into the operation, the battlefield entered a phase of absolute electromagnetic spectrum dominance. Following the dismantling of Russian S-300 batteries in 2024, Iranian ingenuity had produced the SA-65, a domestically built phased array radar with a 150-kilometer range. Hidden in the rugged mountains of Kermanshah, this system was Tehran's last great hope for closing the western corridor to Israeli jets. However, in 21st century warfare, emitting a signal is, essentially, emitting a death sentence. An EA-18G Growler from the Lincoln's air wing detected the first pulse from the SA-65. Equipped with the next-generation ALQ-249 jammer, the Growler didn't just block the signal. It flooded the Iranian operator's frequency with such power that his control screen became white noise. While the Iranian battery commander desperately tried to obtain a firing solution, an F-35I had already passively mapped his exact position, transmitting the coordinates via Link 16 to a Super Hornet orbiting 40 miles away. The launch of the AGM-88 HARM closed the loop. Traveling at Mach 3, the missile's multi-mode seeker, GPS, inertial, and millimeter wave, ensured that even if the Iranian radar shut down to hide, impact was inevitable. In less than 90 seconds, Iran's most advanced defense was erased before it could fire a single round. With defenses suppressed, the skies opened for 12 F-22 Raptors arriving from Joint Base Langley Eustis. These aircraft represent the pinnacle of low observable technology. While the Raptor can detect golf ball-sized contacts at 125 miles, its own radar signature is comparable to a marble. By the time an Iranian fighter could see it on radar, the Raptor would have fired its AMRAAMs 10 minutes prior. But in this mission, the Raptors acted not as fighters, but as invisible intelligence nodes. Using their AN/ALR-94 electronic warfare suite, the U.S. Air Force's data vacuums cataloged every radio emission, every IRGC command post attempting to communicate, and every mobile battery concealed in the valleys. The Raptor pilot doesn't shoot unless necessary. He simply tags the target on the network and lets an F-15E 60 miles behind do the dirty work. Faced with this selective invisibility, the Iranian Air Force made the only logical decision for its own survival: keep its aging MiG-29S and F-14S grounded. Iranian airspace was no longer sovereign territory. but a digitized highlight reel where the defender didn't even know he was being watched from his own living room. As Iran's skies filled with the invisible signature of the Raptors in the rugged mountain ranges of Kermanshah, Lorestan, and Khuzestan, the day's most frantic and desperate battle was unfolding. Here, the targets were not government buildings or naval bases, but TELs, transporter erector launchers. The heavy trucks carrying ballistic missiles capable of reaching Tel Aviv in minutes. The math of this hunt is brutal. An IRGC crew can pull a Shahab 3 missile from a reinforced tunnel, position it in a remote valley, connect the fuel lines, and launch in under 30 minutes, then disappear underground before a satellite detects the launch heat. To counter this threat, the Israeli Air Force deployed 30 F-15I Ra'ams fighters, loaded with Rafael Spice-guided bombs and Delilah cruise missiles. Finding a TEL in the Iranian mountains has been described by analysts as trying to locate a specific food truck in New York, except the truck is trying to destroy a city and moves every 20 minutes. Yet Israeli intelligence, fed by years of SIGINT and infiltrated human sources, allowed the Ra'ams to orbit over valleys, waiting for the precise moment. Infrared imagery captured during the mission reveals the tactical coldness of the weapons system operators. In one sequence, a weapons officer centers his reticle on a launcher already in the vertical position. Despite having a firing solution, he waits. He needs the fuel lines connected and the crew grouped at the base. Upon releasing the Rafael Spice, the bomb uses its electro-optical guidance to navigate the gorge and strike the junction between the chassis and the launch rail. The result is catastrophic. The Shahab 3's 3 tons of liquid propellant ignite in a secondary fireball, leaving the valley floor scorched. Though Iran managed to fire a few rounds before interception or destruction, the bulk of its most dangerous conventional inventory was neutralized in its own trucks. Tehran's iron fists were severed before they could close, leaving its missile silos as useless monuments to a deterrence doctrine that had just been dismantled from the air. As evening fell, the Middle East strategic landscape had been completely rewritten. The operation's final phase focused on the total eradication of Tehran's immediate retaliation capabilities. While the Raptors continued their invisible patrol, coalition fighter waves swept over Shahed, 136 drone storage centers. In a series of coordinated strikes spanning 3 provinces, more than 950 drones were incinerated in their launch racks. These were the very swarms the IRGC planned to unleash on Israeli cities and US bases that same afternoon. Now, they were smoldering scrap in collapsed hangars. Yet the deepest blow of the day was not physical, but digital and organizational. Following the relentless logic of severing the nervous system, precision US strikes hammered command and control infrastructure deep in the interior. Underground bunkers, communication relays, and critical fiber optic nodes were systematically eliminated. The impact was immediate and devastating. Iran's internet traffic collapsed to 4% of normal capacity. Field commanders were isolated, orderless, and without a clear picture of the disaster. The regional giant had been lobotomized. In a final act of psychological and cyber warfare, as official networks collapsed, a hacked prayer app bypassed the blackouts to send a simple message to millions of Iranian citizens: help has arrived. This act symbolized the total collapse of state sovereignty before a force that dominates not only steel and fire, but also bits and electromagnetic pulses. The day ended with Iran's air defenses, navy, and missile arsenals reduced to rubble in less than 12 hours. The operation validated a network-centric warfare doctrine where invisibility, speed, and data fusion are the absolute sovereigns of the battlefield. The message sent to the world was unambiguous. The cynical but recurring observation about why the United States lacks a universal public healthcare system found its answer in the industrial scale of this operation. The cost of maintaining a machine capable of dismantling a regional power before lunch is literally a nation's accumulated treasury converted into kinetic power. Iran discovered that 40 years of rhetoric and fortifications are no match for a force that can see every corner of its territory and destroy it before the defender has time to understand that the war, in fact, is already over.